This Friday, Rachelle Bond will be released from custody, less than 23 months since she was arrested and charged in relation to the murder of her daughter, Bella Bond, the 2-year-old girl whose body washed up on Deer Island in June of 2015 and, of course, was known for months as Baby Doe. Today, a judge sentenced Rachelle Bond to time served and 2 years probation. That was part of the plea deal she made in which she agreed to testify against her ex-boyfriend. That's Michael McCarthy at his trial. McCarthy, as you recall, was found guilty last month of murdering Bella and sentenced to life in prison. Rachelle Bond pled guilty to charges of accessory after the fact of murder and larceny for continuing to get state benefits for her daughter after her death. When she leaves jail on Friday, she'll go directly into a drug treatment facility. Rachelle Bond's attorney, Janice Basil, joins me now. Janice, thanks for being here.
You're welcome.
I read in the Globe story, as the day she's sentenced, you said she has nothing. So even if treatment works, she gets into this facility on Friday, she gets clean, what chance does this woman have post this treatment facility?
Well, my experience with Rachelle is that she is someone who really has a will of steel. And if she determines and if she makes up her mind that she's going to lead a sober and drug-free life, I think she will do it.
What is her state of mind right now? Does she feel any responsibility for the death of her kid?
She feels a great deal of responsibility for bringing Michael McCarthy into their life, and really feels horribly that she had such poor judgment about this. She also she knows she made terrible mistakes in this, and there's that issue on top of how much she misses her daughter and the grief she feels over that.
Speaking of missing her daughter, I assume she trusts you quite a bit. If she said to you, "I think I want to have another kid," I mean, she's had problems before Bella, as we know. DCF's taken a couple of kids. What would your advice be to her?
My advice would be to get your life squared away. You would be better off leading a life in which you're productive and sober and contributing to society.
So somewhere in there would be, it's probably not a good idea.
It's probably not a good idea.
In New Yorker magazine, here's a little line. In September, that's you, got a call from the state asking her if she'd be willing to represent either McCarthy or Bond. They said, "Who do you want?" And I, meaning Janice Basil, said, "I'll take the woman." Why?
I thought it would be more interesting. I like working with women. I wasn't sure what had happened in the case, but it struck me that when a mother is involved, there's always something more. So I just thought it would be a more interesting case. You know,
I have to be candid and say I'm amongst those who thought, after having read about the case, that McCarthy would be found not guilty. And, well, let me give you, you've heard each one of these, but I'll just, one, the fact that your client cut a deal to testify and in return gets released for time served, creates, as you know, some sense of concern, I think, on the part of jurors. There was some conflicting testimony. She originally said she had seen the body dump, then she said she hadn't seen the body dump. And the thing I mentioned a couple of minutes ago that she was sentenced for, continuing to collect welfare benefits for a dead kid after her kid was gone. Did you have any doubts about whether or not the jury was going to buy this testimony enough to rely upon? Because this is essentially it. There's not physical evidence to convict this boyfriend.
I actually didn't. And, I mean, the reason I didn't is that there was corroborating evidence of what she had to say. So, first of all, as far as the so-called deal went, I wanted to try the case. I actually thought I could try the accessory after case and possibly prevail on it. She was going to testify against him no matter what. If she were convicted of accessory after the fact, if she were found not guilty, she was going to testify against him. The deal, so to speak, probably meant more to me than it did to her.
I don't get it. Wait. She's willing to risk incarceration when an alternative is she goes scot-free after the trial?
Her most important issue was testifying against him. That was the most important part of all of the time that she spent in jail awaiting trial.
For her kid, or because she held such antipathy towards...
For her child.
Okay.
For her child. That was really important to her. The second issue is that there were problems with her testimony based on a statement she had given to the state police that was inconsistent with what she later said. So let me talk about that for a moment.
Oh, sure.
That statement occurred very quickly, and it occurred on the day that she was picked up by the state police. They had done a very quick interview of her. They were going back to go over it and get more information and ask her questions. When I was appointed, I called and I said, stop questioning my client. So they never got the opportunity to get more details from her. The third thing I would say is that there was corroboration of many of the things she said. And one of the things that was a really important piece of corroboration, which, in fact, she didn't know about, was that where the body was put was this sort of little hidden kind of cove. And it turned out, I didn't know this, that this was a place he used to hang around with a high school girlfriend and with friends. And the DA was able to find that woman, and she testified.
I know her testified. One other thing about the trial was that, obviously she said that the reason she didn't disclose anything about her dead child was for fear of McCarthy. But did she ever talk, when she saw these posters that had this uncanny... She didn't see them. She
didn't see them. And she was not the only one who didn't see them. Remember, this child had a pediatrician, a DCF worker. There were many people that knew this child and didn't see them. I think one of the differences was her daughter was quite large for her age. And so they had listed the age as 4 years old, if you remember, and her daughter was 2.
Okay.
So I think that threw a lot of people off.
Let me try one more thesis. That it isn't that they believed your client, the jury, but that McCarthy was the only game in town and nobody wants to go home when there's a dead baby with nobody held responsible.
Well, I think there's something to the fact that dead child carries a certain weight in a murder case, but I watched my client testify for 5 days and be cross-examined for 5 days, and she did not hesitate in her testimony, and she was pretty compelling as a witness.
Janice, I have one last thing. We only have 30 seconds left. Is there a lesson for DCF in this in terms of protecting other kids in the future? I mentioned before a couple of kids had been taken away. Most people know the story. Quickly, if you can. Is there a moral to this story going forward or no?
It's really hard to say because DCF was called about this child, but they were basically crank calls instigated by the father who had never even been involved with this child. So I don't know how...
You don't think they should have decided unilaterally to stay involved continually based upon the history with your client?
At the time they signed off, she was living in a shelter with the child. She was doing well with her. There was good supervision. Nothing was going wrong. So unless you want to have children observed and DCF involved with every child forever, there's a limit to what they can do.
Janet Basil, I really appreciate your time. Janice, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here.